All right, so I'm Armando Enriquez. I currently teach first grade at Academia Moderna Charter School. Fortunately enough for me, I live with my uncle, and he also teaches at the same school, Academia Moderna Charter School, but he is now a fourth grade teacher. So this is Tito V, and he's going to be helping me out with my review of my lesson. So we'll go ahead and start with number one. And I'll just go ahead and ask you, Tito, based on the video, um, what do you think my students would have learned at the end of this whole lesson?
Well, the key details, I think, uh, is what they would have learned. The key details and the central idea is what I think they would have learned.
Okay. Do you think I did a good enough job at explaining to them so that they could go off on their own and feel confident about discovering what key details were?
Yes.
Okay. Um, let's see. It's really hard to say what we learned about the students' learning characteristics. But what could you say is a characteristic that maybe the students, like maybe something that I would need to teach them, so that they can have a little bit of, sometimes there's a struggle when we let the kids go off on their own and they don't know something. So I guess in terms of like social emotional learning, like what could I do to prepare the kids to like be more enthusiastic for the lesson or something?
I think just that. I think just get them pumped for the story.
Mhm.
Like if you're pumped, they're gonna be pumped.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so number two is formulate how effective your instructional design was based on your planning and teaching. I think the approach that I took was the I do, we do, you do method. When I first started reading the story, that's the part where I do it. I was kind of just, um, taking my time with the story, giving it a very like thorough read through, stopping and highlighting and retelling as I went along each page and talked about specific things that were happening in the book. Do you feel like that's a good way for me to go about the lesson? The whole I do, we do, you do technique.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Um, and let's see. Moving forward, how will you plan differently based on your knowledge of student learning characteristics, known and newly discovered? Right. So um, maybe you were kind of telling me something about the
MTSS, multi-tiered systems of
systems
support.
of support. Is there any way, like anything from there that I could have done to support my students a little bit more?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're always going to know your students. You know which ones are capable of doing more and which ones need a little bit more support. So just knowing that, you can support both ends, encouraging one to go take it a step further, and also not making uh, the other students
Like the
feel
lower end of students.
feel incompetent. So giving them different tasks.
So for the higher students, how could I make like retelling the story more of a challenging task to them?
They could always rewrite the story with different key details. Like, for example, the setting.
Mhm.
The setting could be at a different place. It could be at night. It could be in space. It could be under the sea.
Mhm.
And just changing that one little thing is going to change even the characters.
Mhm.
So it'll change the story and it'll challenge the students to come up with a different sequence.
And kind of be like a little more creative and use what they know about those like elements to create the story.
Mhm.
Yeah. How about for like the lower level students?
Well, just depends on how low they are. I do something as simple as maybe just drawing,
Mhm.
maybe kind of like a comic book strip or something like that.
Mhm.
Something easier that they can do.
Mhm. Do you think it's fair, or not necessarily fair, but like more of like a stepping stool to have the students like just talk about the story and use.
I think that would be a good idea for some, especially for those ELs. They can practice their speaking skills and also their retelling.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I agree as well. I think, by having the lower students, draw pictures or use more of that communicative style of retelling the story is going to help them a lot more with like that language development. So that's a very good idea. How do you think I could modify or incorporate kind of like a new level of presentation for the students?
You can always start with so I taught first grade and we had these like one pagers, and they just told a whole story in one page. So that could be you could do the whole thing by yourself, and they can just listen to that.
Is it like a shortened version of the story, or
It's a
is it like
shortened
all
version.
the words on one?
It's a shortened version, but it's detailed too. So it's just it's a one pager, and you go through the whole story, and you do the whole thing by yourself, and then maybe adding to that, instead of you reading the book, you could do a shared reading, and because as first graders, they need that practice of reading too, so they can come up and help you with the story and read with you, and maybe even for your low students, they can just come up and point. That's it.
For me
For you as you read, something simple like that. So.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that helps, and it also kind of goes into a little bit of the engagement of the learners. Sometimes I feel like standing up there or doing the read aloud, on my own, some of the kids kind of drift in and out, and I think to give them that opportunity to come up, and if you are a low reader, it's not going to be like a daunting feeling. Like your job is not, you have a choice. You can come up and read and help me out and read, or you can, come up and maybe present a question, or maybe, like you said, maybe you could be the, the pointing finger for the reading. And I think that helps out with all the students to keep them engaged. You're right. Yeah, I think it keeps them engaged, and it also, keeps them focused on the story and want to, remember more details. Or I think that like, it might solidify details because you remember like, oh, I remember what he was reading because I was the one following the words, or I remember this detail because, little Johnny read it and he read it really good. So I think that's a really good piece of advice right there. So thank you. I thank you for reviewing my video. And if do you have any comments or concerns or suggestions for something that I can
I'm not gonna lie, I'm just really glad I'm not doing first grade.
Yes, fourth grade is probably a really big difference.
It's a huge difference.
But
But
thank
still
you.
has its challenges.
Yeah, I bet. Thank you for taking the time to help me out with this. I very much appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.